I had been washing Liu Ryan's underwear for 2 years. But today, I accidentally broke the strap of one of her bras while washing it. She gave me a fierce slap on the nose. The next moment, she said she wanted to reward me. Then she pulled me along with her friends. For women and to men went on a trip together. On the first night, we stayed at a small motel. We booked 3 connected rooms. As soon as we entered the room, Liu Ryan eagerly went to freshen up. Unexpectedly, right after she finished washing up, the doorbell rang. Another guy stood outside and loudly asked Liu Ryan if she wanted to join him for a 5-person game. The group pulled Liu Ryan away to play. The walls in the motel weren't very soundproof. Soon after, I could hear laughter and chatter from their game. Around 2 a.m., the noise from the next room stopped. I called Liu Ryan, but she hung up on me. Later, I found out. From the very beginning, that guy intended to rescue me. Our group of 6, for women and to men, planned a road trip together. However, when we met up, the other guy looked at me with hostility. He rolled his eyes and said, "Weren't there just supposed to be 5 of us? Why is there another guy?" I was completely baffled. Had Liu Ryan not told her friends beforehand that I was coming along? Liu Ryan seemed a little startled too. Then she scolded the guy with a playful smile. "How can you say that? This is my boyfriend. Can't he come with us?" The guy pursed his lips and complained. We clearly agreed it would just be the 5 of us. "You're not keeping your word." This blatant disdain made me furious. I turned around, ready to leave. Liu Ryan quickly grabbed me and said, "Don't get upset. I don't know what's gotten into him today. Don't stoop to his level." It was obvious they didn't welcome me. Why should I stick around? "If you want to go, then go. I'm not coming." I reached out and asked Liu Ryan for the car keys. She didn't have a car and had planned to use mine for the road trip. Liu Ryan hesitated for a while. She asked the guy to apologize to me. The other 3 girls also insisted that he apologize. The guy refused to give in. Liu Ryan sighed irritably. Then she said to me, "Fine, I won't go either. Let's leave." Unexpectedly, as soon as Liu Ryan finished speaking, the guy rushed over and grabbed her wrist. He said with grievance, "No way. It's so hard for all of us to meet up. Ryan, you have to come." Liu Ryan forcefully pulled her hand away, then apologized to my boyfriend. The guy held back for a moment and said, "Can't it just be the 5 of us? Bring him along next time? Then you can go have fun on your own." Liu Ryan grabbed my hand and started to leave. The guy chased after us and said to me, "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Let's go have fun together." Liu Ryan stopped in her tracks. Her expression softened a bit. The other 3 girls also joined in, urging me not to be angry anymore. They said Zidu was spoiled by them and told me not to take him too seriously. I honestly didn't want to go anymore. But thinking about how much Liu Ryan had been looking forward to this trip, I couldn't bear to ruin her mood. Liu Ryan leaned close to my ear and coaxed me. "I know he's annoying, but he's Shai Zhengxiang's boyfriend. He's been our friend for years. It wouldn't be right to ask him to leave. The others are all great people. We can just ignore him. Besides, you've already taken your vacation days. It'd be such a waste not to go." I was still hesitating, but Liu Ryan pushed me into the car. Before I got in, I heard one of the girls say, "Ryan, this new car is nice." Liu Ryan smiled. After getting in, she scratched her head a little sheepishly. "Boater, I borrowed your car to show off a bit. You don't mind, do you?" I stayed silent. The sunlight outside the car window was bright and warm. Inside, it was just me and Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan started humming a happy tune. For someone like me, always working under high stress, the chance to go on a trip was truly rare. I had been looking forward to this trip for a long time too. But now that we were actually on the road, for some reason, I felt a constant uneasiness. Aside from me, Liu Ryan and the others were all college friends. The other three girls were Liu Ryan's roommates in college. They were Shen Nian, Gu Qingqing, and Shai Jingxiang. Shai Jingxiang's boyfriend, Zidu, was in the same class as them. Liu Ryan said, during their college years, the five of them often hung out together. Their relationship was very close. This for girls, and one guy setup had the vibe of a TV drama. As the only guy in the group, Zidu was probably the prince of this little circle. That's likely why he was so resistant to me joining them. I couldn't help but recall Zidu's delicate face. Although his personality was eccentric, I had to admit, he had a very likable face. Thinking this, I felt a vague sense of insecurity. I asked Liu Ryan if she had ever had a crush on Zidu. Liu Ryan said, how could that be possible? Why not? There's no such thing as pure friendship between men and women. Otherwise, why were you all hanging around him for so long? Who was hanging around him? It was clearly him hanging around us. Liu Ryan laughed softly and said, he's just a jerk. I'd have to be blind to like him. I was shocked by Liu Ryan's bluntness. But while I was relieved she could recognize a jerk, I also felt an inexplicable awkwardness. We made several stops along the way. Everyone became much more familiar with each other, except for Zidu. The other three girls were all very friendly. Liu Ryan also took great care of me. The unpleasantness from the beginning of the trip faded significantly. By midday, we chose a spot in the wilderness for a picnic. The girls took charge of preparing the food. I had nothing to do. I picked up my camera and started photographing the surrounding scenery. While framing a shot, I unintentionally captured Zidu squatting by the stream. He had a blank expression, holding a small wooden stick, absent-mindedly stirring the water. Behind him were the girls, busily preparing the food. The girls were happily bustling around together, each with smiles radiating on their faces, forming a stark contrast to his expressionless demeanor. Just as I was wondering why he seemed so unhappy, he suddenly lifted his head and stared directly at me. I felt a bit awkward. Raising my camera, I said, "You looked great just now, squatting by the stream. I took a picture of you. Do you want to see it?" I was just being polite, thinking that since he disliked me so much, he probably wouldn't come over. To my surprise, he stood up and walked toward me. I had no choice but to show him the photo. I added, "It'd look even better if you smiled." He pressed his lips together at first, then sneered and said, "Why does smiling make it better? Do you think everyone is as foolish as you? Always grinning like an idiot." I was so furious at his words. I couldn't understand what had gotten into me. That made me try to talk to him in the first place. After finishing his jab, Zidu walked back toward the girls. Like a little brother, he grabbed Liu Ryan's arm and whined, "Ryan, when will the food be ready? I'm starving to death." He even glanced provocatively at me after speaking. I got goosebumps all over and felt my head throb with anger. Fortunately, Liu Ryan was quite sensible. She quickly dodged his hand as if she had been electrocuted and playfully scolded, "Stay away from me. I'm in a relationship now. Don't touch me like that." Zidu's smile froze for a moment. Then he rolled his eyes dramatically at Liu Ryan. "Theft, stop pretending to be proper." Liu Ryan didn't back down. She directly told Zidu to stay away from her and to stop sticking around her. After dismissing Zidu, Liu Ryan smiled at me as if expecting praise. I forced a smile back, but my dislike for Zidu deepened even more. Not long after, the food was ready. Earlier, when we got out of the car for fresh air, I had been avoiding contact with Zidu. But now that everyone was sitting together for the meal, it was impossible to avoid him. I sat beside Liu Ryan, while Zidu sat between Shai Zhengxiang and Shen Nian. Gu Qingqing sat a bit farther from them. It was our first time cooking and eating outdoors. Although the food was simple, it tasted extraordinarily delicious. At first, I was absorbed in the food and the scenery, paying no attention to anything else. But halfway through the meal, I noticed something odd. Logically, Zidu was Shai Zhengxiang's boyfriend, so their closeness was expected. However, Zidu and Shen Nian, sitting on his other side, were also physically close. The level of proximity among the three of them was about the same. What was even stranger was that Zidu's knee repeatedly bumped into Shen Nian's thigh. Shen Nian, with her head lowered as she ate, kept her legs tightly together. Yet she still couldn't completely avoid Zidu's touches. This obvious anomaly, the others all pretended not to see. Shai Zhengxiang even occasionally leaned past Zidu to chat and laugh with Shen Nian. Perhaps my gaze was too obvious. Shen Nian noticed and shifted slightly, putting more distance between herself and Zidu. I wanted to tell Liu Ryan, but I feared she'd think I was making a big deal out of nothing. In the end, I stayed silent. After the meal, the girls once again took charge, cleaning up with teamwork. I stood off to the side, watching them. Zidu, however, walked over to me and said, "There's a train station up ahead. Why don't you just head back?" I stared at him, speechless. Then I sneered, "What do you mean? I'm following you. The car Liu Ryan's driving is mine." The gas in the tank was filled by me too. Before we left, it was Liu Ryan who begged me to come along. "You have no right to tell me to leave." Zidu raised an eyebrow. He looked like he wanted to say more. But at that moment, Liu Ryan walked over toward us. Seeing her approach, Zidu backed off, saying, "Suit yourself," before walking away. My mood, which had finally lifted, was once again dampened. Vacation days are hard to come by. Wasting them on an unpleasant trip was even more frustrating. I genuinely considered heading to the train station and going home. But Liu Ryan kept persuading me, saying we'd already come so far, and it'd be such a shame to leave now. She told me to ignore Zidu. "Just treat him like a dog," she said. "He can only bark at you a few times. He can't actually do anything to you. Don't pay attention to him." I didn't respond, even though Liu Ryan made sense. I still felt uncomfortable inside, partly because of Zidu's deliberate hostility, and partly because of the strange, inexplicable tension between the group. In the evening, we arrived at our first destination city. We stayed at a small motel. Liu Ryan mentioned that during their university days, they had also traveled here and stayed in the same motel. It was a nostalgic revisit for them. We booked 3 rooms in total. All the rooms were adjacent to each other. I had been dating Liu Ryan for half a year, but we had never stayed together before. So as soon as we got to the motel, Liu Ryan couldn't wait to freshen up. However, just after she finished showering, the doorbell rang. It was Zidu outside, loudly asking Liu Ryan if she wanted to join a 5-player game. Liu Ryan declined, but Zidu kept banging on the door, saying they were just 1 player short. Liu Ryan reluctantly opened the door. Outside stood not only Zidu, but also Shai Zhengxiang and Shen Nian. The group playfully pulled Liu Ryan away with them. As they left, they turned to me and said, "Don't worry, brother. We'll return Ryan to you soon." The motel's walls weren't very soundproof. Before long, I could hear the laughter and chatter of their gaming session from the next room. They kept playing until late into the night. Bored, I scrolled through my phone and sent Liu Ryan a message asking when she'd come back. She didn't reply. Without realizing it, I fell asleep. But my mind was unsettled. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. The room was still empty, it was just me. I started feeling angry. Listening closely, the noise from the neighboring room had also ceased. I called Liu Ryan, but the call was immediately hung up. Frustrated, I redialed, only for it to be rejected again. I tried calling once more. This time, her phone was turned off. My anger surged instantly. What's the meaning of this? Rage consumed my rationality. I stormed over to the next room and banged on the door furiously. As I knocked, I shouted, "Liu Ryan, what's going on?" The door flung open suddenly. Zidu stood there, his eyes blazing with anger as he glared at me. We stood there silently, staring each other down. I tried to step into the room to find Liu Ryan, but Zidu forcefully shoved me back. He hissed angrily, "They're already asleep." I stared at him. "You're sleeping with them?" Zidu's glare intensified. Through gritted teeth, he spat. "Stay out of it," I retorted. "My girlfriend is in there." I tried to push past him again, but Zidu continued to shove me out. As we pushed and struggled, suddenly another person stepped out of the room. Zidu's body stiffened. His face turned ghostly pale. It was Gu Chinking, who stood at the door, apparently woken by the commotion. Her eyes were bleary with sleep as she asked, "What's going on?" I stood there, utterly confused. They had been friends for many years. So why was Zidu so terrified? Zidu stayed silent. I had no choice but to ask Gu Chinking directly, "I'm here for Liu Ryan." Gu Chinking rubbed her head and replied, "Liu Ryan, is she here? We stayed up till late playing games last night, and we just fell asleep right after. I'll go wake her up." After saying this, Gu Chinking turned on the room's lights. The commotion woke everyone else up too. Liu Ryan stumbled over to me, still half asleep. I asked her why she hung up on me. Rubbing her head in confusion, she said, I didn't hear my phone ring at all." It was obvious Zidu had been meddling. I wanted to ask more questions, but Liu Ryan had already flopped back onto the bed and fallen asleep again. When I woke up the next morning, Liu Ryan was gone. Strangely, so was everyone else. I knocked on doors for a long time, but no one answered, so I went to ask the front desk. The receptionist said they had left around 5 a.m. I ran out of the motel, only to find my car missing as well. I was completely dumbfounded. What kind of nonsense was this? Did they bring me here just to steal my car? That couldn't be, right? I called Liu Ryan. Her phone was still turned off. At that moment, Zidu sent me a photo. It showed Liu Ryan driving my car. He was sitting smugly in the passenger seat. He added, "We've already set off. You can buy your own ticket home." I was about to explode with rage. I replied, "Bring my car back immediately. Otherwise, I'll call the police." Zidu replied with a string of ellipses, then said, "Why are you so annoying? Liu Ryan is your girlfriend, isn't she? What's the big deal if she borrows your car for a few days? Is that worth calling the police over? Enough talk if you're not back within half an hour. I'm calling the police." Zidu stopped responding. Not long after, Liu Ryan and the group came back. Liu Ryan acted as if nothing had happened. With a smile, she said, "Oh, you're awake." I sneered, "Give me the car keys. Go do whatever you want, but count me out." Liu Ryan looked at me, bewildered. Then she asked, "What's wrong?" She explained, "Boda, when I woke up this morning and saw you sleeping so soundly, I thought I'd let you sleep in a bit longer, so I didn't wake you up to come with us. Sorry, Boda. Don't be mad, okay?" I was equally confused. "You weren't planning to leave me behind?" "Of course not. We just went to see the sunrise," Liu Ryan hurriedly explained. That's when I finally understood. It was all Zidu's doing. Early in the morning, he rallied everyone to go watch the sunrise, but told Liu Ryan not to wake me up, claiming that guys usually get cranky when woken up early, and waking him without enough sleep will just make him angry. In short, he was still trying every trick in the book to get rid of me. I was utterly speechless. Why was he so obsessed with making me leave? Liu Ryan was equally furious. She lashed out at Zidu with a barrage of harsh words and warned him to never mess with me again. Zidu hung his head and said nothing the entire time. That strange feeling crept up on me again. I tried hard to pinpoint the source of this dissonance. Unconsciously, I glanced around the room. Suddenly, my eyes landed on Shai Jingxiang, who was calmly playing on her phone. Normally, when someone's boyfriend is being scolded, wouldn't their girlfriend react with some level of concern? Especially since Liu Ryan's words were quite harsh. Some of them were so strong even I felt uncomfortable listening. Why was Shai Zhengxiang so composed? Could it be that Shai Zhengxiang didn't love Zidu? But if she didn't love him, why bring him along on this trip? And why was no one else stepping in to mediate? Weren't they supposed to be close friends? As the trip went on, I noticed that everyone's attitude towards Zidu was entirely different from what I had initially imagined. I had thought Zidu was the golden boy of this small group, but now it seemed I had completely misunderstood. Alright, that's enough. Don't let it ruin the mood. Eventually, it was Gu Qingqing who spoke up to break the tension. Only then did Liu Ryan stop venting her frustration. Before getting in the car, I glanced at Zidu again. He lifted his head. Our eyes met. In his gaze, I saw traces of something regret, maybe? But when I looked at him again, he had already averted his gaze. After leaving that city, we had a day and a half's journey to our next destination, which meant we would have to camp out in the wild for one night. The beauty of nature seemed to heal the soul, and the journey continued. Watching the orange and blue sky dotted with drifting clouds, listening to the chirping of birds in the fields, and inhaling the fragrant scent of flowers and grass carried by the gentle spring breeze, I felt as though my entire being was purified. All the unpleasant thoughts from before were left behind. Liu Ryan deliberately kept some distance from the car ahead of us. It felt as though this journey had turned into a private road trip for just the three of us. By evening, our group finally reunited. Perhaps because he hadn't seen me all day, Zidu's mood seemed to have improved noticeably. By the time he and Liu Ryan started chatting, they were cheerfully sorting out ingredients and setting up tents. I watched as Zidu pulled a shabby, tattered tent out of the trunk. One glance was enough to tell it was completely unusable. Shai Zhengxiang frowned and said, "You were in charge of preparing the tents, and this is what you brought? How do you expect us to use this?" Zidu pouted and said, "I didn't have money, so I rented the cheapest one available." Shai Zhengxiang snapped back, "Where's your money?" Zidu replied, "I lent it to Shen Nian." Shai Zhengxiang shot a glance at Shen Nian, then turned to Zidu and said, "Stop carelessly lending out your money in the future. Where do you even get your money from?" The atmosphere suddenly turned tense and awkward. The group fell silent for a moment. Shen Nian let out a sly smile and said, "As if you've never asked him for money before." Shai Zhengxiang's eyes widened in shock. She pointed at Shen Nian and said, "What are you talking about?" Liu Ryan and Gu Qingqing quickly stepped forward to pull the two apart. A few people whispered among themselves. During the conversation, Shai Zhengxiang and Shen Nian cast a few glances in my direction. I was filled with suspicion. Turning my head, I looked toward Zidu. I noticed Zidu was watching them with a faint smirk. This small commotion quickly passed. We began setting up the tents together. There were only 2 tents. The girls had to be more cautious, and so did the boys. From the bottom of my heart, I didn't want to share a tent with Zidu, but I had no choice. The girls started pitching the tents. Zidu and I went to prepare the ingredients. While cutting the chicken, Zidu accidentally sliced his finger on the knife. Blood gushed out. I thought he would rush over to the girls, acting coy and seeking attention, but he merely grabbed a tissue and casually wiped the wound. The cut seemed deep. The tissue quickly soaked through with blood. The bleeding didn't stop. I couldn't stand it any longer. I took out the small first aid kit I had specially prepared for this trip and asked if he needed help. Zidu glanced at me. Then, with a mischievous smile, he stretched out his finger. "Didn't think you'd be so kind." I ignored him. Helping him bandage the wound didn't mean I liked him. Zidu sighed again. "Too bad your taste in men is awful. Falling for someone like Liu Ryan," he added. Wow, he was clearly trying to sow discord again. I couldn't help but reply sarcastically. "And yet Liu Ryan has no interest in you." I figured the reason he targeted me so often might be because he secretly liked Liu Ryan but couldn't win her over. Unexpectedly, Zidu suddenly let out a chuckle. The laughter grew louder and more intense. In the end, he even buried his head in his knees, his shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't tell if he was laughing or crying. I quickly finished dressing his wound and moved as far away from him as possible. I started to wonder if his mental state wasn't quite right. Soon, the food was ready. Zidu, as if performing a magic trick, pulled out a box of alcohol. He declared, "Let's drink until we drop tonight." Liu Ryan and Gu Qingqing reminded him that they had to drive tomorrow, so they couldn't drink. Zidu, however, dismissed their concerns. "No worries, it'll all metabolize by morning," he said confidently. Shai Jingxiang chimed in, "We live for the moment. Enjoy the wine while it lasts. After all, we're here to have fun," she added. "At worst, we'll just leave later tomorrow." With that, the group began drinking. As the alcohol flowed, so did their conversations. They started talking about their university days. From their stories, I learned that back in college, Zidu had faced bullying from his doormates. Due to his poor family background, he was introverted and didn't know how to stand up for himself. Shai Jingxiang, who was the class monitor at the time, along with her close friends, had helped Zidu a lot. That's why their bond was so strong. So back then, I was really grateful to all of you. Zidu said, raising his glass in a toast. He drank it all in one go with a bold and hearty gesture. For some reason, I noticed a glimmer of tears in his eyes. If only that incident hadn't happened, everything would still be like it was before. Liu Ryan muttered, her sentence trailing off. Gu Qingqing hadn't even managed to say a word yet. Gu Qingqing was abruptly kicked hard by Liu Ryan. "What nonsense are you spouting?" she scolded. "If you've had too much to drink, go sleep it off." Gu Qingqing glanced at me, then at the others. She gave a bitter smile, downed the rest of her drink in one gulp, and retreated into the tent. I've never had a high alcohol tolerance. I wasn't sure if it was the night breeze or something else, but after just a little, I already felt dizzy. I went into the tent early to sleep. I had no idea when the others returned to their tents. Half asleep, half awake, I felt someone patting my face. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt impossibly heavy. I struggled for what seemed like forever. Finally, I managed to open my eyes. Zidu's eyes were wide, filled with excitement. "Get up!" he exclaimed. "What's going on?" I asked in alarm. I sat up quickly. Zidu repeated, "There's a fire." The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak and unsteady. Zidu half pushed, half dragged me out of the tent. As I steadied myself, I saw that the girls' tent had become a massive ball of flames. I stared at Zidu in shock. "Where are they?" I asked. "They're still inside," he said calmly. "They've probably all burned to death." A chilling, eerie smile crept across Zidu's lips. I stared at the burning tent, my mind in complete chaos. Suddenly, I saw someone crawling out from the flames. Zidu saw it too. The next second, he grabbed my hand and started sprinting towards the car. But my legs felt weak, and I couldn't run fast. Zidu didn't let go of me, though. Damn it, I clearly upped the dose. He muttered, "How are you still awake?" "Figures, it's fake medicine," he cursed under his breath, while pulling me along. He kept swearing furiously. Completely clueless, I stumbled behind him. Behind us, I could hear a woman's enraged screams. We reached the car. Zidu didn't forget to frisk me and take my phone. Then he stepped on the gas and sped off. I watched as the blazing fire faded into the distance, my chaotic mind finally clearing a little. "You were trying to burn them alive?" I asked, my voice trembling. Zidu didn't answer. Instead, he said, "I told you to leave, but you wouldn't. Now, even if you want to leave, it's too late." "Why are you joking?" I asked in disbelief. "Aren't they your friends?" Suddenly, I recalled Zidu's strange behavior yesterday at the motel. Terrified, I blurted, "Did you plan to kill them last night?" "That was the original plan," he admitted. But I reconsidered. The motel owner was innocent. A murder at the motel would have caused a huge uproar. And then you had to interfere and ruin things, so I let it go. I was speechless, afraid that saying the wrong thing might make this lunatic kill me too. You're probably wondering why I'm doing this, he said. At this point, there's no harm in telling you. Because they're monsters. They violated me. They humiliated me. Zidu took a deep breath, his face dark with emotion. He continued, during university, they did take good care of me. Maybe helping someone weaker fed their sense of vanity. But in the first 2 years of college, because of them, I was genuinely happy. Then came my 3rd year. On my birthday, we went out to celebrate together. Everyone got drunk. And then it happened. Afterward, they begged for my forgiveness. Because if I went to the police, the 4 of them would be finished for life. Remembering how they had cared for me before, I softened. We made a pact to bury this filthy, shameful incident deep in our memories. None of us would ever speak of it again. From that day on, I distanced myself from them. It wasn't until 6 months ago that I reconnected with them. Why did I reconnect? Because someone broke the pact. Zidu said 6 months ago, I was planning to marry Liu Ryan. Shai Zhengxiang somehow heard the news. She came to me and showed me a video. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my stomach. Zidu glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Just as you guessed, he said. It was the video of them assaulting me. When I saw the footage, my scalp went numb. I realized my life was over. I looked at Shai Zhengxiang in front of me, and I was filled with overwhelming regret. Why had I softened back then? Why didn't I go to the police? But that wasn't the end of it. After Shai Zhengxiang had left, Shen Nine came to find me as well. He wanted to borrow money from me. That's when I found out. It turned out that each of them had a copy of that video. That was when I finally woke up to the truth. They weren't angels coming to save me. They were demons dragging me to hell. So I decided to take them down with me. But you can still report them to the police, I said. The police will help you. Why resort to such an extreme method? Zidu sneered, report them? Will the police kill them for me? I fell silent. He was too agitated, and I didn't want to provoke him further. I don't want to hurt you, he said, but to prevent you from reporting this, I can't let you go until I've finished them off. You'll have to stay put in the car. Surprised, aren't you? This trip's ending is just the 2 of us, walking it together. I lay in the back seat. Zidu pulled a rope from who knows where, tying up my hands and feet. I guessed it was around 2 or 3 in the morning. The sky outside was still dark. There were hardly any cars on the road. I asked Zidu, where are we going next? He didn't reply. Moments later, my phone rang. Zidu answered it, putting it on speaker. Liu Ryan's voice came through. How are you? She asked. Where are you? Zidu responded, he's with me now. Don't worry, he's safer with me than he ever was with you. Liu Ryan continued, Zidu, whatever happened between us, we can talk it out. There's no need to drag anyone else into this. Talk it out, Zidu scoffed. How exactly do you plan to talk this out? Shai Zhengxiang's voice came through the phone. Zidu, where are you right now? Don't do anything reckless. Weren't the 5 of us supposed to be lifelong friends? Shen Nine chimed in as well. Zidu, we've been friends for so many years. What can't we talk through? Let's sit down and discuss this. Everything is negotiable. There's no need to take things this far. Shai Zhengxiang added, Zidu, before. We didn't consider your feelings. We realize now that we were wrong. We really won't dare to repeat our mistakes. Please don't do anything foolish, okay? Zidu remained silent for a long time. Then Gu Qingqing spoke up. Zidu, back then, Shai Zhengxiang and Shen Nine did go too far. They know they were wrong now. Even between teeth and tongue, there are occasional clashes. So how can there not be misunderstandings between friends? Do you really not remember all the good times we've had over the years? No matter what you do to us, we won't blame you. We just don't want you to do something you'll regret. Gu Chinking paused for a moment. Then she added, "Where are you right now? Let's meet and have a proper talk. Let's clear up all the misunderstandings." Zidu still didn't say a word. I was completely dumbfounded. Was he really being swayed by them? What followed was the four of them taking turns, each speaking with heartfelt sincerity to persuade Zidu. They said things like, "There's no need to escalate this. Everything can be resolved peacefully. We're all still young, and there's so much life ahead of us. Don't make an irreversible mistake out of impulse." Wait a minute, Zidu seemed to have turned back into the obedient little brother in their eyes, quietly listening to their brainwashing. I finally understood why Zidu hadn't reported them back then. But after suffering once, was he really going to let it happen a second time? Wake up, Zidu! Despite being in a kidnapped state, I couldn't help but remind him, don't listen to their nonsense. They have no intention of truly repenting. But Zidu seemed convinced by their words. His final sentence was, "I'll wait for you all at the agreed location," before ending the call. I couldn't help but warn him again. They're all scheming liars. Don't fall for their sweet talk. But Zidu seemed like he was possessed, completely ignoring me. Soon, we arrived at the base of Segunyang Mountain, the last stop of our original trip itinerary. The scenery here was breathtaking, like a painting, but I was in no mood to appreciate it. Thinking back on everything that had happened during this journey, I realized it might be the most thrilling experience of my life. Not long after we arrived, Liu Ryan and the others pulled up in their car. Seeing them, I felt a wave of anxiety. If the four of them planned to do something to us, we'd be in serious trouble. However, Zidu was oblivious, getting out of the car without hesitation. He even pulled me out along with him. I edged closer to Liu Ryan and whispered, "Can you let me go?" Zidu said, "We're already here. Why would you leave now?" Liu Ryan chimed in, "Let's wait until the evening. We'll head back together." My heart sank. When I heard them say we were going to climb the mountain, the rest of my hope vanished entirely. I tried in vain to get Zidu to return my phone, but everyone acted as if they hadn't heard me. They even chose a secluded, rarely traveled path for the hike. Zidu clearly had his reasons for being so bold. I trudged along behind them, defeated. Finally, some things started to make sense to me. Back at the motel, Gu Chinking had been the first to wake up, and when we camped, Gu Chinking was also the first to retreat to her tent, although I didn't know the reason. It became clear that Gu Chinking was likely working with Zidu. Shai Jingxiang and the others weren't fools either. During the hike, it was evident they were wary of Gu Chinking. Everyone harbored their own schemes. As we climbed, they kept talking, their words an endless stream of nonsense. But I no longer had the energy to listen. My mind was consumed by one thought. What were my odds of survival? After all, no matter who dealt with whom, as a witness, I would be unlikely to escape unscathed. As we neared the summit, they began shoving and roughhousing, putting on a theatrical display with all the skill of seasoned actors. Shai Zhengxiang was the most devious. While apologizing profusely to Zidu, she subtly maneuvered to push him closer to the edge of the path. Zidu appeared completely unaware, until he suddenly slipped, nearly tumbling down. Fortunately, he managed to grab onto Shai Zhengxiang's sleeve. By the time I realized what was happening, Shai Jingxiang was already trying to push Zidu off the cliff. Gu Chinking moved to help him, but Shen Nian blocked her. Shai Jingxiang shouted for Liu Ryan to assist her. Trembling, I glanced at Liu Ryan. Her eyes were red as she stared back at me. I hadn't figured out what was going on yet. When I saw Liu Ryan kick Shen Nian hard in the stomach, Gu Chinking broke free, rushing to Zidu's aid. Together, they shoved Shai Zhengxiang off the cliff. Terrified, I didn't dare move. Shen Nian, realizing things had turned against him, clutched his stomach and tried to run. Zidu lunged forward and grabbed him. The two began grappling fiercely. Gu Qingqing approached, and with a swift kick, she sent Shen 9 plummeting down as well. Zidu's eyes were bloodshot. He turned toward Liu Ryan, but Gu Qingqing held him back. Enough, she said. It's not enough, Zidu roared. None of them are getting away. He tried to charge at Liu Ryan, but Gu Qingqing held him tightly, shouting at me to call the police. Panicking, I fumbled in Zidu's pocket for my phone and managed to report everything to the authorities, my words stumbling. It was early autumn at Segunyang Mountain, the scenery heartbreakingly beautiful. Zidu sat on the ground, hugging his knees, the breeze gently lifting his hair. He was smiling peacefully. The police wouldn't arrive for a while. We didn't descend the mountain. Zidu said, it took so much effort to get up here. I want to enjoy the view for a bit. After so many years, he sighed. This is the first time I've felt so relaxed. Zidu let out a long, weary sigh. The smile on Zidu's face grew even brighter. Suddenly, Gu Qingqing, who had been standing quietly next to Zidu, bent down. She cupped Zidu's face in her hands, leaning in as if to kiss him. Zidu reacted like a startled cat, instantly lashing out with claw-like aggression. Without hesitation, she slapped Gu Qingqing hard across the face. What are you doing? She snarled through gritted teeth. It was as if the slap hadn't landed on Gu Qingqing's face at all. She continued to gaze at Zidu with deep affection, saying, Zidu, I love you. You love me, don't you? If you loved me, why did you let those vile women do that to me back then? I had never seen such a look of anguish on someone's face. Gu Qingqing continued, from the moment I first saw you, I had feelings for you. But back then, you always seemed to prefer being with Shai Jingxiang. I knew I wasn't as pretty as Shai Jingxiang, and I wasn't as wealthy as her either. So even though it pained me, I could only suppress my feelings for you. That night, under the influence of alcohol, I thought if I could just, I'd have no regrets even if I died. Shut up, Zidu yelled. I don't want to hear this. You're nothing but a selfish, self-serving person. And you dared to call it love? Don't disgust me. Zidu suddenly shoved Gu Qingqing to the ground. Gu Qingqing quietly endured Zidu's fury. Smiling bitterly, you're right, she said. I am a selfish and despicable person. Every time I wake up in the middle of the night, haunted by the memory of what happened, I want to kill the weak, pathetic version of myself from back then. Faced with their manipulative persuasion and the influence of alcohol clouding my mind, Gu Qingqing continued, I committed a mistake I'll never forgive myself for. Zidu, this time, it's not about helping you. It's about seeking my own redemption. When we get to the police station, please don't say anything wrong. Zidu stood there, dumbfounded. Then, out of nowhere, he began wailing, tears streaming down his face. When a guy likes someone, he cried. He just doesn't know how to say it. Back then, the person I liked was always you. Gu Qingqing's hands trembled violently, her eyes smiling through tears, but her mouth sobbed uncontrollably. She fell to her knees, crying out in agony. The police finally arrived. They helped Gu Qingqing to her feet, placed handcuffs on her, and escorted her away. When we got down the mountain, just before Gu Qingqing was put into the police car, Zidu struggled free and rushed over. Qingqing, he called out, before planting a kiss on her cheek. Some mistakes can never be forgiven, he said. Gu Qingqing had pushed both of them off the cliff. Zidu's actions were deemed self-defense. Gu Qingqing confessed everything about the past, and the video served as irrefutable evidence. Both Gu Qingqing and Liu Ryan were sentenced to prison. Zidu came to see me once more after it all ended. He told me, do you know why Liu Ryan helped me? It was because Gu Qingqing told him, if you side with Shai Jingxiang and Shen 9, you'll be the next to fall. I looked at him silently. Zidu added, Liu Ryan might not have been a good person, but he truly loved you. So what? I replied, knowing what he's done, I could never accept him. Zidu smiled faintly, Then I suppose that's his punishment for his crimes. I hesitated for a moment, then asked, what about Gu Chinking? Zidu remained silent for a long time. Damn it, it was just executed yesterday.